Welcome to March's, sorry, I'm already ahead. I'm already in next month. April's Clarity First Conversation. My name is Brian Rose, and I'm excited to host our conversation today with Jim Randall. We're going to get started here. I'm going to fire this keynote screen, and we're going to get moving. Sorry about that, guys. Let me deal with a little technology here. All right. Jim, can you see the presentation? We good?
Yeah, it's the presenter notes there, Brian.
Oh, very good. That helps. That helps.
There we go. There we go.
All
yeah,
right.
You got it right there. We're good.
Welcome, welcome. My name is Brian Rose, and as you saw and heard, that's Jim Randall. We're excited to have you in this month's Clarity First Conversation. As you're jumping in here to the webinar today, please just drop your name, city, state in the chat. We're also going to use that chat for a little bit of Q&A. We're going to use that as some feedback. Jim and I are excited about sharing kind of this emerging tool with you, how the Lord has been using that in different organizations and churches as we've gone along. And so we're excited to do that, but we want it to be interactive too. So tell us who you are, where you're from, and then also drop in questions in there. And at the end of our time together, we'll do that. I'm going to open us with a word of prayer, and we'll get going. Lord, as we lean in right now for just a few minutes, this Holy Week, this Thursday morning, Lord, we know the significance of this week and these few days, both a few thousand years ago, Lord, but also right now, Lord, is just eternal significance. And so, Lord, we also know, though, that every week, every Sunday, Lord, we are tasked with and given the honor to share the resurrected Christ and the gospel, the life-changing gospel of Christ, Lord, with folks. And so, Lord, even though we're all focused and we're all dialed in, and Lord, everybody right now is running hard towards Sunday. As Phil Wickham just saying, Sunday's coming. Lord, we know that every day, Lord, we need to be just as focused on the calling you've given us, Lord, what you've put in our hearts, Lord, this disciple-making call to make disciples who make disciples who make disciples. And so, Lord, use this time, use this tool, Lord, use this pause in what's probably a pretty busy week, Lord, to renew, refresh, and energize those that are leaning in. Lord, and for everyone watching the replay of this, for everyone catching this after Easter and down the road, Lord, we pray that they would be just as focused and just as energized about getting to share the good news of Jesus Christ as they were on Easter Sunday. So thank you for this time you've given us. In Christ's name I pray, amen. Jim, we're going to open with this quote. When clarity is absent, leaders resort to destructive behaviors that divert the church's energy and effectiveness. Unpack that for us a little bit, Jim.
Yeah, Brian, 17 years serving in church ministry, 20 years now serving on the Bride of Christ as we've led through Exano. I think one of the things that I have found time and time again is that there's a direct relationship between the behaviors of leaders and the behaviors of teams and their effectiveness. So when I say when clarity is absent, when the organization is missing mission, strategy, vision, for all different types of reasons, the behaviors of the team become destructive. And so what I mean by that is, for example, behaviors are when people are working alone, right? Or when departments or ministries are working against each other. Yeah. Or even when leaderships are limiting the people within our ministry, then those behaviors result in a kind of a destructive kind of posture for the church where it loses its energy and effectiveness. And so what I'm really excited about today, and actually, Brian, pretty shocked that there's been very little out there about the relationship between the various types of negative energy and ultimately the positive energy that we want to have within the local church and as it relates to clarity.
Yeah. Well, Jim, let's just jump right in. Let's look just a high level quick
Okay.
overview. We're going to get into these one by one, but as you mentioned, there's 4 types of energy in every organization. The first 3 are negative. The first there is sideways energy, right? And we'll define that. The next is manufactured energy, untapped energy, and finally focused energy. So let's just dive into these 4 types of energy and unpack those. Sideways energy, Jim.
Yeah, let's
talk to us about that.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, so sideways energy. Working with a client just a few years ago, and just kind of noticed some of these behaviors that we're going to talk about in a moment. That quite frankly led to just thinking through what we mean by sideways energy. It exists when there is an inefficiency or a lack of alignment within the church, within the organization, that hinders progress and undermines forward movement, right? And so we find that all of a sudden the church that has great capabilities, they're finding themselves literally not aligned, literally not working well together, and so the inefficiency and the lack of alignment is prevalent. And what I want to propose, or what we're going to talk about today, are just kind of identifying 6 kind of quick. And by the way, I think there's far more than 6, but these are some quick examples of sideways energy. The first one is when, as a team, we have misaligned goals, right? So sideways energy is going to emerge when an individual or departments or teams within our church have differing goals or priorities that do not align with our overarching mission and vision, right? They literally are taking us to a different place, and to having us to not be on the same page. Lack of communication. We see sideways energy becomes prominent when there's a communication channel breakdown, resulting in misunderstanding, resulting in delays and lack of clarity, right? That this lack of communication creates this sideways energy because people find themselves in a chaotic working environment where they're not on the same page. Another example of sideways energy, Brian, and I think this is probably one of the ones that each of us, we probably talk about a little bit more. It's siloed ministries, right? It's when departments or teams, they work in isolation, right? They work independently of anyone else, not interdependent, but independent. They focus solely, right, on their own objectives, and they're not looking at the broader goals, right? And so what happens is you've just created a breeding ground for sideways energy to flourish.
Right.
And we see it time and time again. As a matter of fact, I would say that the number one probably example of sideways energy is when we talk about siloed ministries and how, kids ministries, working, in a antithesis way with student ministry, and adult ministry is working opposite of women's ministry, or, worship arts ministry is working, in a completely different framework as it relates to, maybe the executive ministries of the church. And so we find that silo begin to take place. Another one is inefficient decision-making. Now, this is what I'm finding. And Brian, I think you may see this from time to time as well. There are some cultures where the decision-making is slow, right? It's slow, it's bureaucratic. Maybe it even lacks transparency. It results in frustration. As a leader, I become disengaged. I mean, I pull out a little bit. I'm like, you know what? Geez, it's just going to be too hard to move stuff through. So it's easier for me to just go work on my own and just kind of go do whatever. And this energy drain of inefficient decision-making, it diverts our focus from helping to be a part of achieving the church's and the organization's mission and vision, right? And so, huge one. Another one is poor accountability, right? Poor accountability. sideways energy really thrives in organizations where accountability is lacking. There's this culture. I don't know if you find this, Brian, but there's this culture that gets created where individuals are far less motivated to contribute. Like they don't want to contribute. And because of that not wanting to contribute, once again, find them out there doing their own thing, creating sideways in energy. And so this lack of accountability leads to complacency and, quite frankly, a decrease in overall performance.
Yeah, there's no accountability to contribute, right?
There's no accountability to contribute. There's no accountability to align. There's no accountability to be focused on what the overall church is trying to accomplish, right? And when there's a lack of that accountability, I don't know about you, but I found that, leaders like to be led, right? And if you don't lead leaders, then they're going to lead their own way. Right. So no wonder that there's sideways energy as a result. The last one that we'll just spotlight today, and once again, there's so many out there. These are just kind of this is just a sampling of examples of sideways energy, is that resistance to change. There are organizations that resist change, and so they cling to outdated practices, maybe systems, process that will generate sideways energy, and that will hinder their ability to adapt and evolve. And so if someone is resistant, or a department or something is resistant to new ideas or approaches, they end up impeding the progress and prevent the church from accomplishing its mission and vision. And so all of a sudden, once again, you've got this sideways energy that's emerged. And some of these are going to be overlapping concepts and some of the other negative energies. But for sure, I don't know, I have just found time and time again in working with executive teams around across the country that one of the things that's a benefit is for us to name these sideways energy, right? The sideways energy, for us to name it, for us to be able to move into it so that we can do what? Ultimately, we want to help them clarify. We want the team as a leader, we want you to clarify for the person or the group or the team the goals or boundaries of vision, right? So that they can harness that power of alignment. So for me, sideways energy, what we're trying to overcome or what we're trying to push to is we're trying to push to alignment. And the way to push to alignment, you can't just say, okay, align. You have to clarify for them what those guardrails are. You have to clarify with them what they're missing within that aspect. And Brian, I know you. I know that there's a metaphor in a lot of things for you. You love metaphors, and I know you've named a metaphor for this one. So I love hearing you talk about this idea of a river, not a puddle.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you see a lot of sideways energy, Jim, and what you've described in these 6 kind of ways we can spot it. Just 6 of very many ways we can spot it. When we move that needle, as we see on the gauge on the bottom of the screen, over to focused energy to the right-hand side, we got to think river, not puddle. We got to build river banks through the vision, through the identity, the direction, this God's better future. And so this force of energy that we call leadership, but you can imagine like a running river. The riverbanks help us focus it towards something productive. I grew up in the Tennessee Valley, and the TVA was built in the New Deal, where hydroelectric power was produced from the Tennessee River. And so this idea that your leadership is a force, but they need riverbanks, not otherwise they'll spill out and become a puddle. So that's kind of what I think of when it comes to sideways energy like that. The second type, Jim,
that analogy, a comment on that analogy is I grew up in Louisiana. Yeah. And so it gets worse than the word puddle for me. You got to think river or it's going to become a swamp, right? Yeah. Which is a complete dead body of water, right? And so it's even a more extreme. But yeah, I love that analogy. And I love how you kind of remind us as leaders, we got to help them to think river.
It's our job, right? It's the Ephesians 4 calling to equip the saints to do the work.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we're called to do here. Let's look at number 2. Let's look at the second type of energy. This is manufactured energy, Jim, and I'm going to dive into this one. Manufactured energy exists when activities, programs, and events are foundational but maybe don't feel consequential to a leader's gifts or calling. And they may not even feel very fun, right? Manufactured energy are the
Yeah.
things we have to do in order to do the things we really want to do, right? And every organization has manufactured
Right.
energy. And it's not necessarily a deficiency as much as it is something just to realize as a leader, there are things we're going to do that produce or kind of cause manufactured energy. And as a leader leading leaders, and by the way, if you're watching this webinar in some way, I'm sure you're a leader leading leaders, even if that leader is yourself, just recognizing when these manufactured energy moments are there, we need to lean in. Here's a couple things that produce manufactured energy. First is training events, right? Training events, manufactured energy lives in retreats, training events that need to happen, but maybe that haven't been well planned in the past. And so getting ahead and planning, considering outcomes first, responding to unique personalities, like they don't have to feel as dreadful as sometimes they feel, because we need training events, right? We need mandatory meetings. We need meetings where people come together. But there's that phrase that we've seen around in this kind of work from anywhere, work from home season. Like, this meeting could have been an email, right? And I was on one, admittedly, last week that I felt like, even for our Oxano team, I felt like, man, this could have been an email. And I went in with an attitude, right? It was manufactured energy. And so once again, preparation, consideration for who's there, focus and communicate the outcome, invest in the experience every time, meet from an agenda, not for an agenda. And that's a little thing there with those mandatory meetings. When we meet from an agenda, the agenda is just a starting point. We move from. I've been in too many mandatory meetings that meet just for the agenda. Like, we're just meeting to check off an agenda. And that creates manufactured energy and dampens our effectiveness as an organization. Number three, these exist, right? Performance reviews. I'm amazed at how many pastors and staff receive no development or feedback. And those that do, performance reviews feel somewhat manufactured, and they're essential, but we have to move them from being rubber stamp moments. We can leverage our organizational values, leverage your church values in performance reviews, leverage your vision horizons to benchmark success. I was with a missions organization this past week, and their executive director is holding the staff to and accountable to their long-range strategies. So those performance reviews aren't just manufactured energy; they're accomplishing the vision of the organization. Your people are living out the values, and we can celebrate that with performance reviews. The next one, I think, processes and systems. A lot of times these become manufactured energy, database entry, guest follow-up, expense reports. Every one of these things make my head hurt. But listen, effectiveness and sometimes our 501c3 status hang in the balance of doing these well. And so we have to keep people in the center of process. In fact, outreach after Easter is about the people we have a chance to have a conversation with, not just the execution of the process. And so these types of manufactured energy, Jim, just kind of sit out there, and if we don't understand and recognize them, we can have a challenge with that. And so here's what I think here, Jim. We got to motivate this person or group with rewards. Listen, people are motivated by rewards, whether that's time off, whether that's extra financial incentive, whether that's fun time, some of those things, rewards or an involvement in an activity that may be more appealing or exciting to them. And listen, we don't have to think of this as a negative kind of a pandering thing. We just have to think of, like, listen, people are moved out of their calling and out of their giftedness. And so there's only so much they could spend in there. Jim, I know this for you, this phrase here, think flywheel, not Ferris wheel. I know for you, you've experienced that. Unpack that for us a little bit as we kind of wrap manufactured energy.
Yeah, well, listen, whenever I think sometimes manufactured energy feels like the bane of my existence, whether it's personal or, from myself, like many of the people on the webinar today, we struggle with a lot of things. And when I think about manufacture, I kind of run it through this little grid, right? And it helps me to think about this flywheel side of it, not this continual Ferris wheel that's just caught in this cycle of just rotation of just, never changing, no progress type thing. You're not going anywhere. But when I think of manufactured energy, I think about the things that I love to do, which are my passion areas. I think about the things that I get to do, which are responsibilities. And, quite frankly, I'll embrace those responsibilities. And then there's some things that I have to do, right? Which, once again, kind of just a little different than the important things of what I get to do. These are the things that I'm not going to use the word obligated, but maybe once again, a better word is responsibility. But then all of a sudden, there's the thing, whether it's individually, organizationally, and excuse me for being so blunt, these are just things I hate to do, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes my manufactured energy is birthed in these things of what I hate to do. And an organization is no different. And people are, we're made up of people, made up of leaders, and there are just some things that we just do not like to do. And what happens is oftentimes when that is misguided, right, then that becomes this manufactured energy. And so when I think about this flywheel, which is going to get momentum and it's going to get progress and it's going to, like, how do we motivate the person through reward or involvement, which, by the way, that motivation may include moving off some of these responsibilities that create create manufactured energy from some of your best leaders in your church and your organization. Let's figure out a way to let's offboard some of that manufactured energy to somebody who actually would love doing it. Right? That's when the flywheel starts to take place. And that's when you start to have progress and movement versus that never ending Ferris wheel that's fun for about a minute in my world. Right. But I'm certainly not wanting to live my life on a Ferris wheel.
That's great, Jim. I love those 4 types. And it leads right into the untapped energy, because I feel like in many organizations, this is maybe the most heartbreaking. Like, we always are going to have manufactured energy. Sideways energy exists because we have people. To me, the untapped energy maybe is the most heartbreaking. Unpack that for us a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm going to just come out of the gate and just say this, Brian. I feel like this is one that, I see myself in all of these at various places, but this is one I really have to push myself on personally, because sometimes we get so busy, right? But untapped energy exists when we underutilize people, and let's call it not just people, but ideas or even resources. And therefore we fail at producing results. Like, we miss out on the results we'd like to have. And so, when I think about these 3 areas, I think about, first of all, this unrealized potential. And this is where I have to do a gut check. You mentioned Ephesians 4 a little bit earlier. I have to do the gut check and just not let myself as a leader to forget that biblical responsibility that I have, that, quite frankly, a stewarding responsibility to equip and develop the resources and the skills of people that are serving with me, right? So this unrealized potential is when untapped energy is present, when team members are not given autonomy, right? They don't have decision-making authority. They certainly we're not giving them growth opportunities. And what we do is their potential remains dormant. We foster, if we foster a culture of empowerment, we can allow these individuals to take ownership, right, of their work, to encourage creativity, motivation to go to this another level. And we want to see that happen. But I'm going to tell you, for me, I have to make sure that I don't become so either caught up in my own leadership or caught up in the busyness of leadership that I miss out on the unrealized potential of people, therefore seeing this untapped energy. Another one is overlooked opportunities. And we're getting a little bit of a stretch here on this idea of untapped energy, because we're going a little bit beyond people. But Brian, this is what I'm finding here. When there is a lack of collaboration and, let's just say, cross-functional communication within a team, right? What happens is, or even when I as a leader, if I'm ineffective at cultivating valuable ideas and opinions or ministry solutions, then what happens is there becomes this culture where we're not fostering ideation, we're not We don't get to hear ideas. They're unheard. We stifle creativity, right? And valuable energy in the area of idea. I love this phrase. I love thinking through this. Valuable energy in the world of ideas remains untapped within the organization. How shame on me as a leader, and once again, kind of self-deprecating here, but shame on me as a leader if I'm not doing whatever it takes to foster within my team, right, some of the absolute best ideas and the best solutions, and they're sitting there right underneath my nose, but yet I'm overlooking these opportunities that are there in people or in their ideation. This is a big one for me, and I can tell you that I've served with teams. I've served with leadership teams that I'll sit there in a room and I'll ask questions that are moving towards solutions, and they'll be frozen. I think of a church that I was working with about 2 years ago, and I had a full leadership team in there of about 35 ministers and pastors, and they were, and I'm going to say this, Brian, they were shell-shocked because I invited them into the ideation and collaboration, and they were not used to it because they had served the entire ministry career on an autocratic leader who didn't foster collaboration. They didn't invoke people into the conversation or bring people into the conversation, and so they would miss out on so much of what God would have in store. So I think it's something, I went a little longer on this one, but I do think it's something that if we're not careful, we get caught up in our own thinkholes of leadership and we miss out on it. And then the last one, the third one, is underutilized resources. Oh my gosh. This is a back and forth thing for me, Brian. I struggle with just kind of, once again, sometimes paying attention and just really being dialed in. You know that churches possess a wide range of resources, and if we sit here and name those resources, like the physical resources of facilities, of people, of opportunities, of influence, of just things that they have collected through the years, most of the time, those assets that churches possess are underutilized.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, they could be tapped or they could be redirected toward a focused energy. But unfortunately, we get kind of caught up in this, kind of almost blind eye to some of those resources that we have. So we got to spin this, right?
Yeah.
And we got to spin this and go, okay, what's the solution here? The solution is, how do we equip the person, the group, the team? How do we equip the culture? How do we, to where we utilize the resources of people, ideas, and these resources in order to advance our vision, right? How do we take these things that are sitting right underneath us, and how do we use them to advance our vision? Oftentimes, we're just going out and creating new ones, right?
Yeah.
So, so it's a big one. It's a big one for me, but I do think it's one that it's easy to think about the person of untapped energy, which is huge, by the way. But I think there's a lot of things that are untapped energy examples within the ministries that we each lead.
And Jim, I think the movement here is to think mining, not maintaining, right? We think, a lot of times, again, we're so busy, and without really a clear directional call in front of us, we fall into that maintenance mode of just kind of keeping the organization running, surviving till next Sunday, rather than what does it mean to mine the next layer deeper? And so you talked about it in the terms of people, and I run into so many leaders, Jim, I know you do too. They're like, hey, we want to reach a new generation. We also want to have another generation, a younger generation in leadership, but we're calling these young people in to just maintain something we've built versus mining and allowing them, hey, what are your gifts and calling? How does your perspective on the world? How does your understanding of the gospel and the impact on where we are and how we can reach people and make disciple makers? We're not mining that out. We're just inviting them in to maintain, and they're not going to do it.
Absolutely.
They're not going to do it.
They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. And you know what? They're going to leave. because that environment, that culture, that church is a leadership cap for them. They're not going to be able to reach their potential there. They recognize it, they learn it, and they leave. And so as a leader, we've got to mind that out in the person and the leader that we're leading.
Here's the last one, Jim, and this is kind of where the gauge points to. The light goes green on it, and
let's flip the script here, right? Yeah.
I love it to think about focused energy. Like, this is where we want those other three to move. And this has to be there when the singular visionary call remains a stated goal. Like, we don't have these shadow goals of high attendance or kind of inflated egos, but hey, listen, there's this thing the Lord has put in front of us. That's the stated goal. And here's what's most important: forward progress is observable. It's highly directed, it's purposeful, and the entire organization is aligned toward this common objective. Here's what happens when we have focused energy. First is clarity of purpose. It's a clear and well-defined organizational mission and vision. Unashamedly, this is what we do. Like, the clarity of our purpose, our mission, the sending call for the Great Commission, and the vision, that picture of God's better future as we do this. When everybody, all leaders and staff and members are called to this, then energy becomes focused. I'm thinking of a church right now I got to work with last year, major metropolitan area, NBA basketball team city, and their 1 year focus is a year of prayer. And everyone every day for 5 minutes. They even have 5 objectives in this. There's an objective for the family, for the church, for their neighborhoods, for their city, for the nations. And so you kind of see and feel this clarity of purpose. And by the way, it's producing energy. Like, that clarity of purpose, this is our call. We know why we're here. It's bringing those things there. What next happens when we're focused is ministry alignment. We talked about siloed and sideways energy. Man, what happens when there's a high level of alignment in the organization? Ministry teams and individuals work in harmony. And I love that idea that, hey, we're all on our own note, but we're working in harmony with each other, with efforts directed toward the same goal. And the goal must be stated and restated and restated. In this church, this church that's praying, it was really fun to see the kids ministry interpret that and kind of create some coloring pages in their teaching time. And you can start to feel families now being pulled into that. And really, I just described it. It brings creative innovation. Focused energy encourages innovation and creativity. We find effective ways to reach the desired outcome. In my design background, I learned that constraints produce beauty. And so focusing actually allows greater creativity to happen. As we say sometimes, Jim, focus expands, right? It allows us to be innovative. 90% of solving a problem is defining the question. And so for this church that's praying, they created a prayer wall in their worship center, and then even a text thread that goes out. People can opt into those things. And so there's some innovation that happens in that. You can tell I get excited about focused energy because there's high productivity, right? Everyone's working toward the same objective. There's a sense of purpose and urgency in achieving the church's visionary strategies that are on the long range, and really some short-term initiatives that are in the short range. And so I love that idea there of just, hey, we are productive as a team. And finally, and I think just the excitement of it is we make tangible progress. There's evident, measurable progress. Like, we're achieving outcomes that contribute to this missional call, this vision. And leaders, this is the important thing. These outcomes are outcomes defined in the lives of people, right? These outcomes are what's defined in the lives of people. We're measuring and celebrating, and we have stories of life change and disciples being made who are making disciples. And so, like, being able to see, not just survive Sunday, but see success in this calling that God has put in front of us. And so that's focused energy right there. And Jim, we have to fuel the person or group by using clear outcomes and regular celebration. Being clear, hey, this is what success in our calling looks like in the lives of people. That's when we say outcomes. We're talking about disciple-making success in the lives of every person. not just something that the church staff puts on a spreadsheet, and regular celebration of those things. And Jim, we have to think laser, not lantern, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I love this. I love this analogy that you use whenever when you talk about the importance when it comes to clarity, when it comes to focus energy, how we really have to go, okay, what is the most important? Like, how do we have a laser focus on our energy, not just assume that we're going to just have this broad swath. And I know that lantern has a big area of light as well, but just this idea that something lit, just because a room is lit up doesn't mean that I know where I'm supposed to go.
Yeah.
And this idea of laser focus, a laser light that points me exactly where I need to go. I would say, Brian, that it is the responsibility of the leader to provide clarity downstream,
mm-hmm.
and it is the responsibility of the team, right, of the ministry, of the team member, of the ministry, of the department, to align itself upstream to that clarity. And my experience is this. My experience is that almost every team member wants to be a part of Focus Energy. They want
Right.
focused energy in their life. They want it in their ministry. They want to help the church accomplish its mission. They want to help the church, execute and build its strategy. They want to help the church achieve its vision. They want those things to happen. And so it becomes our responsibility as leaders to provide that laser level of clarity for them to actually be able to achieve that.
Yeah. And that's what we have to do here to move the needle in these different types of energy. We have to clarify sideways energy, just kind of bring in kind of a summary here. We got to motivate manufactured energy. We need to equip the untapped energy, and we need to fuel focused energy. So clarify, motivate, equip, fuel. Those words, I mean, this is what happens when
those are good action words, right?
Yes.
Those are good. Those carry a weight of responsibility for us as a leader. And that's what I love about those words. Is it lets me know what I've got to do as a leader.
It drives disciple-making success. At the end of the day, Jim,
right?
We've got to make disciples. There's no other call we've been given as leaders in the local church other than make disciple makers. But we also see generational growth and ultimately the realization of God's better future. I love, Jim, that we get to do this through process, right? We get to do this through tools and process. Talk about how we equip leaders to do that, Jim, in a vision planning process.
Well, yeah. So in a vision planning process, when we're working with teams that really are, quite frankly, to truly bring focus to the energy of the team, is to really help them with that level of clarity. And one of the resources and one of the services that we provide is an Exano vision planning retreat. It's typically 2 days of about 12 hours worth of meeting over about 2 to 3 days or something like that, where we are facilitating your team through this collaborative experience. Once again, trying to remove the barrier of a lack of collaboration, right? Bringing these back together in order for you to develop a clear vision for the future. I would say that the number one way that leaders reach out to us is they're reaching out to us saying, hey, listen, we got a lot of good things going on at our church. Matter of fact, I read this yesterday in an email from a ministry leader to me. We got a lot of good things going on at our church, but what we're lacking right now is we're lacking the clarity of where we're headed and where we're to be going as a church 3, 5, 7 years from now. And therefore, we're struggling with the entire team being on the same page. So this vision planning retreat results in a vision plan that gives us that, what we need as a church, as an organization, to be headed in the right direction over the next season or window, right? And not only is it in person, but obviously it has some coaching calls and some virtual calls that deal with the follow-up and things like that. And we've made this affordable. Our desire is for God to bring us to churches He'd have us to serve, And so the consulting cost for this is scaled. Our fees are scalable to your context, which is your size and complexity and the nature of your church. And so we'd love for ministry leaders that are on the call or that are listening to this today to reach out to us and just have the conversation about what it might look like to be a part of a process like this.
Yeah. Jim, that's in this process, this planning retreat, the tools and process really are about, first and foremost, kind of identifying some of those critical areas where there is sideways energy or manufactured energy,
right,
or untapped energy. Usually those things kind of come up in process, which is why I love that we do this collaboratively. We don't just kind of go up on a mountain with a senior pastor and come back down with okay, here's what we're going to do. It's bringing that team in. So some of even that untapped energy emerges in there. And then, that resulting plan is that focused energy toward a beyond the horizon dream, this long range, big picture dream, but also this short range. Hey, what's everybody going to be doing these next immediate future, these maybe next 12 to 18 months? And so this is a great way. This QR is a great way to kind of begin that conversation with us. I know it's busy this week, for some that are watching live, and there's kind of this window of early summer. Like, hey, this is the time to be thinking about the fall. This is the time to have focused energy this fall. It's now to begin to look at these different types of pieces of that. I have not been able.
Brian, I'll say this. I would say this: leaders might be kicking themselves if they're still dealing with sideways, untapped, and manufactured energy. They were part of this webinar and they didn't do what they needed to do today. You've got to get in front of this, right?
Yeah.
You got to get in front of it.
Yeah, we can't wait on some of these things. So I love it. I didn't see any formal questions come through the chat, but I did see one text come through, Jim, for you. When it comes to sideways energy, what's been one of the most effective ways you've seen sideways energy move to focus energy? Was there something you saw a leader, a pastor do that really kind of made a difference to moving from sideways energy to focused energy?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I hate to sound redundant on this, but the most effective way to move away from sideways energy, which is ultimately misalignment, right, is to move to alignment. And so the more you can bring your team through clear goals, clear communication, speak to the interdependency of ministries, make decentralized decision making. In other words, just allow leaders to really be able to, by holding them accountable, make better decisions, right? You're going to be able to see the sideways energy begin to go away, right? Whenever we channel the focus in. So honestly, to some extent, it's the antithesis of each of the negative characteristics in sideways energy, right? If we've got misaligned goals, well, let's align them, right? If we have a lack of communication, let's communicate more effectively. And having team, and by the way, I'll just make this comment. If you really pushed me on this and said, what is the single most effective activity? Get in the room and have a conversation, because that's not what's happening.
I love it. Well, listen, leaders, thanks for jumping in on what is, I know, a very busy season. We're excited to have these kind of conversations with you every month. We're going to look ahead to next month and think a little bit more of the value of the planning piece of that. But don't wait, as Jim said, the dance card gets full very quickly, and both as leaders and as leaders serving the church like Oksana. And we want to have the strongest summer and fall we can. So we look forward to hearing from you. And we're thankful for this time. God bless you in your efforts as we reach people and make disciple makers. It's awesome to see you guys, and we'll talk to you very soon.
Thanks, Brian.